Gentlemen, let's get one thing straight. The world is not waiting to hand you success on a silver platter. No one is coming to rescue you. And yet, everywhere you look, men are paralyzed, stuck in a cycle of seeking attention, approval, and validation from women as if that is their highest purpose. It isn't. It never was. We have been sold a lie that a man's worth is measured by his ability to attract women. That if you just say the right things, look a certain way, or earn enough, you will finally be worthy. But let me ask you, is that really where fulfillment lies? If it were, why do we see men who have everything still feeling empty? The answer is simple. They were looking in the wrong place. Instead of chasing, start ignoring. Not out of bitterness, not out of arrogance, but because your time is better spent elsewhere. A strong man does not beg for attention. He does not wait to be noticed. He works relentlessly on himself, his craft, his purpose. And in doing so, he naturally commands respect, not just from women, but from everyone. That is the paradox. The less you seek, the more you attract. Ignoring does not mean resentment. It does not mean hostility. It means prioritization. It means looking at your life and deciding that your energy is too valuable to be squandered on external validation. A man who ignores distractions, who disciplines his mind, body, and ambitions, becomes undeniable. Women will notice, yes, but by then it won't matter, because by the time you have built yourself into something great, you will realize that the approval you once sought was never necessary. So start today. Stop waiting. Stop chasing. Start building. Ignore what does not serve you, and in doing so, you will finally become the man you were meant to be. From an early age, men are conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to how they are perceived by others, particularly by women. Society, culture, and media reinforce the idea that a man's success is measured not by his competence, discipline, or achievements, but by his ability to attract female attention. This belief is so deeply ingrained that many men spend their lives in pursuit of external validation, seeking approval, affection, or admiration as if these things will grant them a sense of self-worth. But this pursuit is a trap, one that leads to insecurity, stagnation, and ultimately failure in the areas of life that truly matter. The need for external validation is a dangerous distraction from real personal growth because it shifts the focus away from the internal character, values, and self-discipline to the external, which is often fleeting and unreliable. If a man's confidence is built on how he is perceived by women, then it is never truly his own. It is borrowed, conditional, and fragile. A single rejection, a moment of indifference, or a failed relationship can shatter his self-position because his foundation was never solid to begin with. This obsession with being validated by women manifests in countless ways. Some men mold their personalities to become what they think women want, abandoning their own interests and principles in the process. Others exhaust themselves trying to impress, to be noticed, to be liked, always looking outward for confirmation that they are enough. But this approach is doomed from the start. People, by nature, are drawn to those who are grounded, secure, and self-sufficient. Ironically, the more a man seeks approval, the less attractive he becomes. Neediness repels, strength attracts. There is also a deeper cost to this mindset. It robs men of the ability to develop true confidence, the kind that is unshaken by external factors. Real confidence does not come from being liked, desired, or praised. It comes from competence, knowing that you are capable, disciplined, and able to navigate life's challenges on your own terms. It comes from developing skills, taking responsibility, and pushing through hardship. A man who places his self-worth in external approval will never experience this kind of growth because he will always be looking outside himself for validation rather than within. This need for validation breeds resentment and frustration. A man who constantly seeks approval but does not receive it will feel wronged, as if he is entitled to attention simply because he desires it. He will blame others for his dissatisfaction instead of recognizing that he was chasing the wrong thing all along. This bitterness does not stem from women or society. It stems from an internal void that was never addressed. True fulfillment does not come from being wanted. It comes from becoming someone worthy of respect, regardless of whether anyone is watching. The only way out of this trap is to shift focus entirely. Instead of seeking validation, seek mastery. Instead of craving approval, crave growth. Develop yourself physically, intellectually, and emotionally, not because it will make you more appealing to others, but because it will make you stronger, more capable, and more at peace with yourself. When a man reaches a point where he no longer needs validation, when he is secure in who he is, regardless of external approval, he becomes truly powerful. It is at this point that validation often follows naturally, but by then it no longer matters. The men who are most respected, admired, and sought after are never the ones who were desperate for attention. They are the ones who built themselves into something formidable, who pursued their own path without seeking permission or applause. That is the kind of man every man should strive to become. Not someone who waits to be chosen, but someone who chooses himself. Many men grow up believing that romantic success is the ultimate measure of their worth. They are fed stories through movies, books, and societal expectations that frame love as the pinnacle of human experience. The message is clear. Find the right woman, win her affection, and your life will be complete. This idea, however, is not only misleading but also deeply damaging. It sets men up for disappointment, weakness, and a life spent chasing an illusion rather than cultivating real strength and purpose. The problem begins with the way romance is idealized. From a young age, men absorb the notion that love is a magical force that will rescue them from their struggles. They imagine that once they have a woman's love, they will be happy, confident, and fulfilled. This mindset causes them to place women on a pedestal, seeing them not as individuals but as saviors, as the missing piece in their lives. They believe that if they can just be charming enough, successful enough, or good enough for the right woman, then everything will fall into place. But reality does not work that way. When men buy into this romantic fantasy, they enter relationships with unrealistic expectations. They expect a woman to fill the emotional voids in their lives, to provide constant happiness, and to give them a sense of purpose. But no relationship, no person can do that. Happiness and purpose must come from within. When men fail to recognize this, they become needy, insecure, and overly dependent on their partners. They place unfair pressure on the relationship, demanding that it provide them with something that only self-improvement and personal growth can truly offer. This dynamic not only weakens men, but also undermines their relationships. A man who idealizes romance often sacrifices his own ambitions, interests, and self-respect in an effort to keep his partner happy. He becomes overly accommodating, afraid to assert his own needs for fear of losing the relationship. This is not love. It is servitude, and it is neither attractive nor sustainable. Women do not respect men who lack their own direction. They do not admire men who make them the sole focus of their existence. A man without a strong sense of self will always struggle in relationships because he is seeking something from his partner that she was never meant to provide. There is also a deeper danger in this mindset. It creates a cycle of disappointment and resentment. When a man believes that love is the key to his happiness, he will inevitably feel betrayed when he discovers that it is not. He will blame women for his dissatisfaction, failing to recognize that the flaw was in his own thinking. He will either jump from one relationship to another, hoping that the next one will be the one that finally makes him feel whole, or he will grow bitter, convinced that love itself is a lie. Both outcomes lead to stagnation and emotional turmoil. The only way to break free from this trap is to shift priorities. Instead of seeking happiness through relationships, men must first seek it through mastery, purpose, and self-discipline. A fulfilling life is not built on romance, it is built on strength, competence, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. When a man dedicates himself to becoming the best version of himself, he no longer places unrealistic expectations on women. He does not need a relationship to feel complete because he is already whole. Ironically, it is this very mindset that makes a man most attractive. Women are drawn to men who have their own mission, who do not seek validation through love, but rather approach relationships from a place of abundance. When a man is driven, independent, and confident in himself, romance becomes a complement to his life rather than the center of it. And in this way, he not only frees himself from disappointment, but also builds relationships that are far more genuine, stable, and fulfilling. A man's first responsibility is to himself, his growth, his discipline, and his ability to carve out a meaningful existence. Yet many men waste years of their lives in pursuit of fleeting validation, focusing on impressing women rather than building themselves into something substantial. This misplaced priority not only weakens them, but also leaves them feeling lost, frustrated, and dependent on external approval for their sense of worth. The truth is simple. A man who prioritizes chasing over building will never attain real strength, fulfillment, or respect. The world does not reward men for simply existing. Unlike women, who are often valued inherently for their presence, beauty, or nurturing qualities, a man's worth is largely dictated by what he creates, what he masters, and what he contributes. This is not a complaint, but a call to action. It is a reminder that men must earn their place in the world, not expect it to be given. A man who fails to recognize this truth will spend his life in a cycle of frustration, constantly looking outward for validation rather than inward for improvement. Chasing women is one of the most common distractions that prevent men from fulfilling their potential. The pursuit of romantic or sexual validation often leads to wasted energy, financial strain, and emotional instability. A man who prioritizes women over self-improvement will bend over backward to seek approval, often compromising his own values in the process. He will spend time, money, and effort trying to become what he thinks will make him more attractive, rather than focusing on what will make him stronger, more capable, and more self-sufficient. This does not mean that relationships are meaningless, far from it. The point is that a man must be solid in himself before he can ever expect to build something meaningful with someone else. If a man enters a relationship from a place of weakness, seeking to be completed rather than already being whole, he is setting himself up for failure. A man who has not yet built himself will become dependent on the relationship for his happiness, and dependency breeds insecurity, resentment, and eventual collapse. Instead of chasing, men must build. They must sharpen their minds, develop their bodies, and cultivate financial independence. Mental strength means mastering one's emotions, learning to think critically, and developing the ability to remain calm and focused under pressure. A man who lacks mental fortitude will be easily swayed by external forces, whether it be societal expectations, rejection, or temporary failures. Physical strength is equally important, not just for aesthetics, but for the discipline, resilience, and confidence that come from pushing one's limits. A weak body often accompanies a weak mind. A man who neglects his health and strength will find himself at a disadvantage in all areas of life. And then there is financial independence, a pillar of true freedom. A man who is financially dependent on others, whether it be parents, a job he hates, or worse, a partner, is never truly in control of his life. Money is not everything, but it grants choices, power, and the ability to move through life without constant fear of scarcity. A man who has built financial stability is not only more attractive, but also more capable of leading, protecting, and providing for himself and those he cares about. When a man commits himself to building rather than chasing, he undergoes a transformation. He no longer seeks approval because he no longer needs it. His confidence comes not from how others perceive him, but from the undeniable reality of what he has built. And the irony is that once he reaches this point, he no longer needs to chase. Women, opportunities, and respect naturally follow a man who has established himself. But by then, he understands that they are not the goal. They are simply a byproduct of his dedication to growth. A man who builds instead of chases becomes unshakable. He is not swayed by rejection, nor does he lose himself in fleeting pursuits. He stands firm, knowing that his value is rooted in something real, his own strength, discipline, and purpose. That is what makes him truly powerful. Respect is not something that can be begged for, demanded, or expected simply because one desires it. It must be earned. And it is earned through action, discipline, and unwavering commitment to one's principles. Many men fail to understand this and mistakenly believe that respect, particularly from women, can be secured through flattery, compliance, or desperate attempts to please. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. True respect is not granted to those who seek it, it is granted to those who deserve it. The first mistake many men make is believing that they can talk their way into being respected. They assume that the right words, the right charm, or the right gestures will somehow force others to see them as valuable. But words without substance are meaningless. A man who says all the right things but lacks discipline, strength, or purpose will never command true respect. At best, he may receive temporary approval, but that approval will fade the moment his lack of real substance is exposed. Respect is tied to action. It is built over time through consistency, through the ability to show up, to perform, to demonstrate competence. A man who is disciplined, who works tirelessly to improve himself, and who holds himself to high standards does not need to demand respect. His actions make it inevitable. Others recognize strength not because it is declared, but because it is evident in how a man carries himself. Desperate pursuit, on the other hand, is a sign of weakness. A man who chases after respect, whether from women, peers, or society, reveals that he does not truly believe he deserves it. The moment someone senses that a man is seeking validation, the respect he desires becomes unattainable. Women, in particular, are highly attuned to this dynamic. A man who constantly tries to prove his worth, who overextends himself in an effort to be liked, is communicating the opposite of strength. He is showing insecurity, and insecurity is repellent to those who value strength. This is not to say that respect and kindness are mutually exclusive. A man should always strive to be fair, honorable, and just. But he should never mistake submission for virtue. A man who allows himself to be walked on, who sacrifices his own needs for the sake of pleasing others, is not noble. He is weak. And weakness, whether it presents as neediness, lack of boundaries, or excessive people-pleasing, never commands respect. Earning respect begins with self-respect. A man who respects himself sets standards for his own behavior. He does not tolerate disrespect, not because he lashes out or demands better treatment, but because he simply does not entertain those who fail to recognize his value. He does not compromise on his principles for the sake of approval. He does not allow fear of rejection to dictate his actions. And, most importantly, he does not rely on external validation to determine his worth. The strongest men in history, the ones who have been admired, followed, and respected, did not chase approval. They focused on their purpose, their mission, and their discipline. They built themselves into something formidable. And in doing so, respect followed naturally. This principle applies in all aspects of life. In business, the most respected leaders are those who act with integrity and competence, not those who try to appease everyone. In relationships, the most respected men are those who stand firm in their values, not those who sacrifice them in a desperate attempt to be liked. When a man truly understands that respect is earned through action, not words, and certainly not through desperate pursuit, he stops seeking it. He focuses instead on becoming the kind of man who naturally commands it. And that shift from seeking to embodying is what separates those who are respected from those who are ignored. Emotional stability is one of the most important traits a man can develop, yet many men unknowingly sabotage themselves by seeking emotional fulfillment through external sources, particularly from women. This dependency, whether it manifests as seeking constant validation, needing approval, or relying on relationships for a sense of self-worth, weakens personal strength and leaves men vulnerable to instability, insecurity, and disappointment. A man who lacks internal stability is at the mercy of his emotions and the unpredictable nature of relationships, whereas a man who cultivates emotional resilience becomes unshakable, grounded, and truly independent. From a young age, many men are conditioned to believe that happiness and emotional security are things to be found in romantic relationships. They grow up with the idea that love will complete them, that the presence of a woman will bring them fulfillment and meaning. This mindset is not only flawed but dangerous because it places a man's sense of well-being in the hands of another person, someone who is not responsible for his internal state. A man who builds his emotional foundation on the presence of a woman is walking on unstable ground. The moment she pulls away, the foundation collapses, leaving him lost, broken, and uncertain of who he is without her. This kind of dependency creates a dynamic of neediness, which is one of the most unattractive qualities a man can exhibit. Women are not drawn to men who rely on them for emotional security. They are drawn to men who are self-assured, who have control over their emotions, and who do not need constant reassurance to function. A man who is overly dependent on a relationship for his happiness will often find himself smothering his partner, becoming overly anxious about minor conflicts, or making decisions based on fear of loss rather than strength and confidence. This not only weakens his position in the relationship, but also erodes respect and attraction over time. True emotional stability comes from within. It is built through discipline, self-awareness, and the ability to navigate life's challenges without crumbling under pressure. A man who has emotional stability does not react impulsively to every emotional fluctuation. He does not allow setbacks, whether in relationships, career, or personal life, to dictate his self-worth. Instead, he maintains a steady mindset, recognizing that external circumstances are temporary, but his internal state is within his control. One of the most effective ways to develop emotional stability is to focus on personal growth rather than external validation. This means cultivating mental strength through discipline, whether it be physical training, meditation, or intellectual pursuits. It means setting goals and pursuing them relentlessly, not because of how others will perceive them, but because of the intrinsic satisfaction of self-improvement. A man who is focused on his purpose does not crumble when a relationship ends because his identity is not tied to another person. It is tied to his mission, his values, and his self-respect. Another key aspect of emotional stability is learning to manage emotions without depending on external sources. Many men turn to relationships, social validation, or even destructive habits to escape their emotions rather than face them directly. But emotional mastery is about accepting emotions without being controlled by them. It means understanding that pain, disappointment, and struggle are inevitable, but do not define one's worth. A man who can sit with discomfort, process it, and move forward without seeking external reassurance is a man who has truly mastered himself. When a man cultivates emotional stability, he becomes someone who is not easily shaken. He does not panic when a relationship experiences difficulties, nor does he become desperate when a woman pulls away. He remains centered because his emotional state is not dictated by others, it is something he has built within himself. And the irony is that this very stability makes him more attractive, more respected, and more desirable. Ultimately, dependency is weakness, but emotional self-sufficiency is strength. A man who relies on others for his happiness will always be vulnerable, always chasing something outside himself. But a man who has built internal stability does not need to chase. He moves forward with confidence, knowing that his foundation is strong, regardless of who comes and goes in his life. That is the kind of man who commands respect from both himself and from others. In an age of endless distractions, reclaiming focus is one of the greatest challenges a man can face. The modern world is designed to pull attention in 1,000 different directions: social media, entertainment, fleeting pleasures, and, for many, the endless pursuit of relationships. Instead of working toward long-term fulfillment, men are often trapped in cycles of chasing validation, seeking approval, and being consumed by distractions that serve no real purpose. This constant diversion from what truly matters weakens ambition, drains energy, and leaves many feeling unfulfilled. A man who reclaims his focus and dedicates himself to his mission, however, not only finds success, but also naturally attracts the right people into his life without needing to chase. The problem begins with misplaced priorities. Many men believe that their worth is determined by their romantic success, social status, or ability to gain attention. They waste countless hours trying to impress others, engaging in meaningless interactions and seeking validation from people who do not add real value to their lives. This external focus causes them to neglect the very things that would make them strong, independent, and fulfilled. Instead of mastering a craft, developing discipline, or pursuing meaningful goals, they invest their energy into things that offer nothing in return. They become reactive rather than proactive, floating through life without direction. The key to reclaiming focus is recognizing that a man's primary duty is to his mission. Every great man throughout history, whether a leader, a creator, or a thinker, understood this fundamental truth. Their lives were not defined by their relationships, but by the work they produced, the impact they had, and the discipline they maintained. This is not to say relationships are meaningless, but they must be secondary to the pursuit of excellence. A man who prioritizes his mission above all else naturally becomes someone others respect, admire, and follow. When a man is fully dedicated to his purpose, distractions lose their power over him. He no longer wastes energy on people who do not align with his vision, nor does he seek fleeting validation to fill an internal void. Instead, he operates with clarity and direction, making decisions based on long-term goals rather than short-term gratification. This kind of focus builds a different kind of man, one who is not easily swayed by the chaos of the modern world, who does not fall victim to the endless need for approval, and who remains grounded in his values. It is this very commitment to purpose that attracts the right people into a man's life. When a man is focused, driven, and disciplined, he does not need to chase relationships, whether romantic, professional, or social. The right people are drawn to strength, ambition, and confidence. A man who is consumed by distractions, on the other hand, repels those who value substance. Women are not drawn to men who lack direction, nor do high-value individuals respect those who waste their time on trivial pursuits. The stronger a man's sense of purpose, the more naturally he cultivates meaningful relationships without needing to pursue them desperately. Reclaiming focus requires discipline. It demands cutting out the unnecessary, setting clear goals, and eliminating anything that does not serve the bigger picture. It means developing habits that reinforce progress, reading instead of scrolling, building instead of procrastinating. It requires a conscious decision to step away from the noise and commit fully to personal growth.